Before you try to change your life in 2026, there's one decision you must make, and it has nothing to do with motivation. Most people misunderstand what it really means to put yourself first. They hear that phrase and immediately feel uncomfortable, guilty, defensive. They think it sounds selfish, arrogant, or cold. And that reaction alone tells you how deeply we've been trained to abandon ourselves to keep other people comfortable. From a young age, you're taught to be agreeable, available, helpful, and accommodating. You're rewarded for saying yes, even when it costs you your peace. You're praised for sacrificing, even when it drains your energy. So by the time you reach adulthood, putting yourself first feels like breaking an unspoken rule. But here's the truth you need to hear clearly. Putting yourself first is not selfish. It is responsible. Think about it this way. If you don't take responsibility for your physical health, your mental clarity, your emotional boundaries, and your direction in life, someone else will pay the price for it later. Your family, your work, your future. Neglect doesn't stay private. Burnout spills over. Resentment leaks out. Confusion shows up in your decisions. When you don't lead yourself, you eventually become a burden to the very people you are trying to please. That's not kindness, that's avoidance. Putting yourself first means you stop outsourcing your well-being to circumstances and other people. It means you accept that no one is coming to manage your energy, protect your focus, or rescue you from exhaustion. That's your job. And the moment you accept that responsibility, something powerful happens. You stop waiting for permission. You stop explaining yourself so much. You stop apologizing for having limits. Look at the strongest, calmest people you know, the ones who seem grounded, consistent, and clear. They are not the ones running themselves into the ground for approval. They are the ones who have learned how to say no without anger, and yes without resentment. They understand that self-respect is the foundation of respect from others. When you prioritize yourself, you teach people how to treat you, not through words, but through standards. And let's be honest, a lot of what we call being there for others is actually fear in disguise. Fear of being disliked, fear of being left out, fear of disappointing people. So we overgive, we overcommit. We stay silent when something doesn't feel right. We ignore our body's signals. We push through exhaustion like it's a badge of honor. But your body keeps score. Your mind keeps records. Eventually, the cost comes due. Putting yourself first doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you care enough to show up as your best self instead of a depleted version of you. You cannot pour from an empty cup, but more importantly, you are not meant to. You are meant to refill it deliberately, consistently, without guilt. Because when you're regulated, rested, and clear, you contribute from strength, not obligation. This is where responsibility comes in. Responsibility is not heavy when you stop fighting it. It's actually freeing. When you take responsibility for your mornings, your routines, your health, your boundaries, you stop feeling like life is happening to you. You start feeling like you are participating in it. You move from reaction to intention, from chaos to structure, from exhaustion to stability. And here's something no one tells you. People who truly care about you will adjust when you start putting yourself first. They may be surprised at first. They may test your boundaries. But healthy relationships survive honesty. Unhealthy dynamics rely on your self-neglect. When you change, things shift. That's not a sign you're doing something wrong. That's a sign you're growing. Putting yourself first in 2026 is about deciding that your well-being is non-negotiable, that your time has value, that your energy is sacred, that your mental health matters just as much as your productivity. It's about understanding that discipline in self-care creates capacity in leadership. Whether you lead a family, a team, or just your own life, leadership starts inward. And this isn't about dramatic transformations overnight. It's about small, consistent acts of self-respect. Going to bed when you need rest. Speaking up when something crosses a line. Taking breaks without explaining yourself. choosing progress over people-pleasing, choosing clarity over chaos, choosing alignment over approval. When you put yourself first, you stop living in fragments. You become integrated. Your words match your actions. Your values guide your choices. You feel less scattered, less reactive, less desperate for validation. You become steadier, calmer, more grounded. And from that place, everything you give to the world becomes cleaner, stronger, and more meaningful. So if 2026 is going to be different, it won't be because you tried harder to please everyone. It will be because you finally decided that taking care of yourself is not optional. It's the foundation for everything else. Most people think they have a time problem, but what they really have is an energy problem. You can have all the hours in the world, but if your energy is scattered, drained, and constantly pulled in different directions, nothing meaningful gets done. And this is why mastering your energy has to come before offering it to the world. Because when you don't control where your energy goes, it gets spent on things that don't move your life forward, and you end every day feeling tired but unfulfilled. Every day, from the moment you wake up, your energy is being negotiated. Notifications compete for your attention. Other people's expectations demand your focus. Old habits pull you into automatic behavior. And if you don't consciously decide where your energy belongs, it will be claimed by whatever is loudest, closest, or most familiar. That's not living with intention. That's reacting on autopilot. Think about how often you say yes when your body is saying no. How often you scroll when your mind needs rest. How often you give emotional labor to situations that drain you instead of nourish you. This isn't because you're weak. It's because you were never taught that energy is a limited resource, and anything limited must be protected, directed, and invested wisely. When you master your energy, you stop confusing busyness with progress. You realize that doing more is not the same as doing what matters. You begin to notice that certain people leave you inspired, while others leave you exhausted. Certain environments sharpen your focus, while others scatter it. Awareness is the first step. You cannot manage what you do not notice. This is where boundaries stop being about other people and start being about self-respect. A boundary is simply a decision about where your energy ends. It's choosing not to engage in every argument, not to respond immediately to every message, not to explain yourself to people who have already decided how they see you. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They allow what strengthens you to pass through and block what weakens you. And let's be honest, controlling your energy will upset some people, because there are people in your life who benefit from your exhaustion, your availability, your overgiving. When you start saying, "I don't have the capacity for that," you expose dynamics that were built on your self-neglect. That discomfort is not a sign you're becoming selfish. It's a sign you're becoming aware. Mastering your energy also means learning when to push and when to pause. Strength is not constant output. Strength is rhythm. It's knowing when to exert effort and when to recover. The body understands this instinctively. Muscles grow during rest, not during strain. Your mind is no different. If you never allow yourself to reset, your focus dulls, your patience shortens, and your creativity disappears. This is why simple practices matter. How you start your morning, what you consume mentally before you engage with the world, how often you move your body, how you end your day. These are not small details. They are energy decisions. Every habit either replenishes you or depletes you. There is no neutral. And here's the shift that changes everything. You don't owe the world your energy. You choose how to give it. When you operate from that understanding, you stop feeling guilty for taking care of yourself. You stop measuring your worth by how much you do for others. You start measuring it by how aligned your actions are with your values. When your energy is focused, your presence becomes powerful. You listen better, you speak more clearly, you act with intention instead of urgency. People can feel it. Calm, centered energy doesn't need to announce itself. It commands respect quietly. Mastering your energy also protects your future. Burnout doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of thousands of small moments where you ignored your limits, and recovery takes far longer than prevention. When you learn to pace yourself, to conserve your energy for what truly matters, you build something sustainable. You build a life you can actually maintain. And the truth is, the world doesn't need more of your exhaustion. It needs your clarity, your steadiness, your focused contribution. But that only becomes possible when you stop leaking energy everywhere and start directing it with purpose. So before you try to show up for everyone else in 2026, make the decision to show up for yourself first, because when your energy is mastered, everything you give becomes intentional, and nothing important is wasted. A lot of people hear the word discipline and immediately feel resistance. It sounds heavy, restrictive, like a life where joy disappears and everything becomes rigid and controlled, so they avoid it. They chase freedom instead. They want more options, more flexibility, more spontaneity. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people learn too late. Without discipline, there is no real freedom. There is only chaos disguised as choice. Look closely at the areas of your life where you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or out of control. It's rarely because you have too many rules. It's almost always because there are none. When there's no structure, your energy gets pulled in 100 directions. Your emotions run the show. Your habits decide your future for you. And that doesn't feel like freedom. That feels exhausting. Discipline is not about punishment. It's about direction. It's choosing in advance how you want to live so you don't have to negotiate with yourself every single day. When you create structure around your sleep, your movement, your work, your focus, you remove friction. You stop relying on motivation, which is unreliable and emotional, and you start relying on systems, which are stable and calm. Think about how freeing it feels when a decision is already made. When you don't have to ask yourself whether you're going to work out, because it's just what you do. When you don't debate staying up late, because you've decided your energy tomorrow matters more than entertainment tonight. That's not restriction, that's relief. Most people mistake discipline for control imposed from the outside. But real discipline is self-chosen. It's you deciding what kind of person you want to be, and then creating daily actions that support that identity. It's alignment between intention and behavior. And when those two line up, confidence grows naturally, not because you feel good, but because you trust yourself. Freedom doesn't come from having endless options. It comes from having clarity. When you know what matters, distractions lose their power. You stop chasing every opportunity. You stop reacting to every emotion. You stop needing external validation to tell you you're on the right path. Discipline sharpens your priorities, and priorities create peace. There's also something deeply grounding about routine. In a world that is constantly changing, discipline gives you something stable to return to. When everything feels uncertain, your habits become anchors. They remind you who you are, what you stand for, and what you're building. That stability doesn't limit you, it supports you. And let's talk about emotions, because this is where most people give up on discipline. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel confident. But discipline is what creates those feelings, not the other way around. Action comes first, emotion follows. When you move your body, your mind clears. When you keep promises to yourself, confidence grows. When you show up consistently, even on hard days, self-respect is built. Discipline also teaches you how to sit with discomfort without escaping it. It trains you to do what needs to be done, even when it's inconvenient, boring, or uncomfortable. And that skill alone changes everything. Because life doesn't get easier, you get stronger. And strength is freedom. This doesn't mean a life becomes rigid or joyless. In fact, it's the opposite. When you have discipline in the fundamentals, you have more space for creativity, rest, and enjoyment. You can relax without guilt. You can take breaks without anxiety. You can say yes to opportunities without feeling overwhelmed, because your foundation is solid. The people who look the most free are often the most disciplined. They've mastered their mornings, their health, their attention. They're not constantly reacting, they're responding with intention. They're not controlled by impulses, they're guided by values. And here's something powerful: discipline protects your future self. Every small act of discipline is a vote for the life you want later. It's choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. It's choosing growth over avoidance. And those choices compound quietly day after day. If you want 2026 to feel lighter, calmer, and more aligned, stop running from discipline. Redefine it. See it for what it really is: the structure that allows you to live freely instead of constantly cleaning up the consequences of chaos. Because the more disciplined you become, the fewer decisions you have to fight, the less energy you waste on regret, and the more freedom you experience in every area of your life. Most of the stress you carry every day doesn't come from what actually happens to you. It comes from the meaning you attach to it. A look that felt dismissive, a message that didn't get answered, an outcome that didn't go the way you planned. Your mind immediately fills in the story, and before you know it, you're emotionally hooked. This is why detachment isn't about being cold or disconnected. It's about learning how to stand in your power without letting every external moment control your inner state. Detachment begins with understanding that not everything deserves your emotional investment. Your attention is precious. Your peace is earned when you attach your self-worth to outcomes, opinions, or validation. You give your power away. You start living reactively, constantly adjusting yourself to fit how you think others perceive you, and that is exhausting. Think about how often you replay conversations in your head, imagining what you should have said, or worrying about how you were received. That loop doesn't change the past, and it doesn't improve the future. It only drains the present. Detachment interrupts that cycle. It teaches you to observe without absorbing, to notice without becoming consumed. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop clinging. There's a difference. Caring comes from strength. Clinging comes from fear. When you cling, you're trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place. Other people's moods, their opinions, their choices. Detachment frees you from that impossible responsibility. One of the hardest attachments to release is the need for approval from family, from friends, from strangers. You want to be liked, understood, accepted. That's human. But when approval becomes a requirement for your peace, you become emotionally dependent. You start shaping your life around other people's comfort instead of your own values. Detachment allows you to act with integrity, even when it's uncomfortable, because your self-respect matters more than applause. Detachment also protects you in moments of failure or disappointment. When things don't work out, attachment says, "This defines me." Detachment says, "This happened and I can learn from it." That shift is everything. It allows you to stay curious instead of collapsing into shame, calm instead of panic, grounded instead of reactive. And here's where real mental strength shows up, in your ability to pause before reacting. Detachment creates space. Space between stimulus and response. In that space, you get to choose. Do I engage or let this pass? Do I respond or stay silent? Do I internalize this or release it? That pause is power. Most people never develop it, which is why they feel constantly triggered and overwhelmed. Detachment also helps you stay steady when life is unpredictable, when plans change, when people disappoint you, when outcomes are uncertain. Instead of gripping tighter, you loosen your hold. You focus on what you can control: your actions, your effort, your values. Everything else becomes secondary. This practice takes intention. It's not something you master overnight. You'll still feel emotions. You'll still get frustrated. Detachment doesn't erase feelings. It prevents feelings from running your life. It's learning to sit with discomfort without immediately reacting or numbing yourself. That alone builds resilience. And let's talk about comparison, because this is where attachment steals so much joy. You compare your timeline, your success, your progress to someone else's highlight reel, and suddenly what you were proud of feels insufficient. Detachment breaks that habit. It reminds you that your path is not meant to look like anyone else's, that someone else's success doesn't diminish yours, that there is no race, only direction. When you practice detachment, you start to feel lighter, less burdened by expectations, less reactive to noise. You stop chasing validation and start building alignment. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself. And here's the paradox. The more detached you become, the more present you are, because you're no longer lost in worry about outcomes or opinions. You're here, engaged, focused, calm. That presence changes how you show up in conversations, in challenges, in decisions. You listen better. You respond with clarity. You act with intention. If you want mental strength in 2026, start practicing detachment now, not by withdrawing from life, but by loosening your grip on what was never meant to define you. Because when you stop needing the world to validate you, you finally gain the freedom to live on your own terms. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, and there's a reason for that. Silence removes distraction, and distraction is how we avoid ourselves. When things get quiet, thoughts surface, feelings rise, questions appear, and instead of listening, we reach for noise. We fill every empty space with sound, screens, conversations, opinions. But growth doesn't happen in noise. It happens in stillness. And solitude is not loneliness. It's a training ground. Silence gives you access to information you can't hear anywhere else. When you step away from constant input, your nervous system settles, your mind slows down. You begin to notice patterns, what drains you, what excites you, what feels aligned, and what feels forced. Without silence, you live on the surface of your life. With it, you start to understand the deeper currents guiding your choices. Solitude is where honesty lives, not the kind of honesty you perform for others, but the kind you practice with yourself. It's where you stop pretending you're fine when you're not. It's where you admit what you're avoiding. It's where you face the gap between who you are and who you want to become. And that gap isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to guide you. Many people fear being alone because they associate solitude with rejection. But choosing solitude is an act of strength. It's saying, I value clarity more than comfort. It's choosing reflection over reaction. In solitude, you stop being influenced by every opinion around you. You stop absorbing other people's urgency. You stop confusing someone else's voice for your own. Think about how often your decisions are shaped by external noise. Social expectations, trends, other people's timelines, advice that doesn't fit your life. Silence cuts through that. It strips things down to what actually matters to you. Not what looks good, not what gets approval, what feels right in your body when no one is watching. Silence also teaches patience. When you're not constantly stimulated, you learn how to sit with boredom, uncertainty, and discomfort without escaping, and that skill is rare. Most people react immediately. They speak before thinking, they act before reflecting. Silence slows you down enough to choose wisely. And this isn't about withdrawing from the world permanently. It's about creating intentional space within it. A quiet morning before the day begins, a walk without headphones, time alone to reflect instead of scrolling. These moments recalibrate you. They remind you that you don't need constant input to exist, you need awareness. Solitude strengthens your sense of self. When you spend time alone, You stop defining yourself by roles and reactions. You reconnect with your values. You ask better questions. Am I moving in the right direction? Is this effort aligned with who I want to become? What needs to change? These answers don't come from crowds, they come from stillness. Silence also sharpens focus. When your mind isn't cluttered, your attention becomes clear. You start to notice what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You become more deliberate with your time. Less reactive, more intentional. That clarity spills into every area of your life. And here's something powerful. Silence builds emotional regulation. When you regularly sit with your thoughts instead of running from them, they lose their grip on you. Anxiety softens, reactivity decreases. You become less triggered by external events because you're anchored internal. You don't need constant reassurance because you've learned how to self-soothe, self-reflect, and self-correct. Silence also reconnects you with intuition, that quiet inner knowing that gets drowned out by overthinking and outside influence. The more you listen, the clearer it becomes. You start trusting yourself again, not blindly, but calmly. That trust changes how you move through the world. In 2026, if you want clarity, strength, and direction, you won't find them by adding more noise to your life. You'll find them by creating space, space to think, space to breathe, space to listen. Because in silence, you don't disappear. You finally meet yourself. Most people believe that change happens in big moments, a breakthrough decision, a surge of motivation, a dramatic turning point. And while those moments feel powerful, they're not what actually shape your life. Your life is shaped by what you do when no one is watching, on ordinary days in small, repeatable ways. That's why daily practice isn't about perfection. It's about identity. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When you show up consistently, even in small ways, you're not just completing a task. You're reinforcing a self-image. You're telling yourself, I am someone who follows through. I am someone who takes care of myself. I am someone who keeps moving forward. And that story, repeated daily, becomes belief. The problem is, most people wait for motivation before they act. They tell themselves they'll start when they feel ready, confident, inspired. But identity doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows identity. You don't wake up disciplined one day. You become disciplined by practicing discipline when it's inconvenient, boring, or uncomfortable. Daily practice removes the pressure to be exceptional. It asks only that you be consistent. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You need to commit to a few non-negotiable actions that align with who you want to be. A short walk, 10 minutes of focus, a moment of reflection. These actions seem insignificant in isolation, but over time they compound, and compounding is where transformation lives. Think about how habits quietly shape your days. You don't decide every morning how to brush your teeth, you just do it. That's the power of practice. When something becomes automatic, it stops draining your willpower. It becomes part of you. And the same is true for confidence, clarity, and self-respect. They are practiced into existence. Daily practice also builds trust with yourself, and that trust is everything. When you repeatedly break promises to yourself, even small ones, you weaken your confidence. You start doubting your own words. But when you keep even the smallest commitments, something shifts internally. You begin to rely on yourself. And self-reliance is one of the strongest forms of security. This is especially important when life gets hard, because it will. When emotions run high or circumstances feel unstable, you won't rise to your intentions. You'll fall to your practices. What you've rehearsed becomes your default. That's why practicing calm, focus, and discipline on normal days prepares you for difficult ones. Daily practice also teaches patience. You learn to measure progress in weeks and months instead of days. You stop chasing quick results and start valuing steady growth. That patience protects you from burnout and disappointment. It keeps you grounded when progress feels slow and reminds you that momentum is built, not forced. And let's be honest, some days you won't feel like showing up. You'll feel tired, distracted, unmotivated, and that's where practice matters most. Because practice isn't about how you feel, it's about what you do despite how you feel. That's where resilience is built. This doesn't mean you push endlessly. Practice also includes rest, recovery, reflection, knowing when to pause and reset. Sustainable practice adapts. It respects your limits while still honoring your direction. It's not rigid, it's intentional. Over time, daily practice simplifies your life. Decisions become easier. You stop negotiating with yourself constantly. You know what you do and why you do it. That clarity creates confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation. And here's the most important part. Daily practice makes change inevitable. When you show up regularly, even imperfectly, growth is no longer a question. It's a process already in motion. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. You create progress through repetition. If 2026 is going to be the year you truly put yourself first, it won't be because of one powerful speech or one emotional decision. It will be because of what you practice every single day. Because who you become is not decided by what you intend, but by what you repeat.